In the previous episode, Takemichi went through hell to change the future for good. He drove Kisaki from Toman and took over Black Dragon. Yet, for some reason, the future went to shit, as in the new timeline Mikey kills everyone and dies at the hands of Naoto. Now back in the past, Takemichi came face to face with Kisaki once again. Unexpectedly, Kisaki addresses him as his hero. Then, he announces that the former 3rd Division captain of Toman is now the General Staff Officer of Tenjiku. He wants to take revenge and create his own version of Toman. In his mind, Mikey would be forced to acknowledge him after that. With that said, Kisaki takes his leaves and cleans them up to the trash guy Machi. Apparently, he is one of the toughest fighters in Tenjiku. Yet, being a lazy ram, he orders his lackeys to take over the job, while he goes to take over the other tougher Toman members. Right after, Takemichi and the others get surrounded by a bunch of dudes without any protection. Luckily, the 4th Division Captain Nahoya and his vice captain / twin brother Suya. This team is famously known as the Twin Devils of Toman, and owning this name they start banging everyone with their motorcycle, proving that smart work is always better. Initially, Takemichi doesn't realize that they are twin brothers. He confuses Suya with Nahoya, since the 4th Division captain always used to smile, while this weirdo seems as if he wants to kill the whole goddamn world. That's when Nahoya calls him out, revealing that his twin brother is known as Angry, but his heart is pure as gold, whereas he is known as Smiley. Despite the look, he likes to trouble people like it's tentacle H-rated anime. Then, together with Chifuyu and Takemichi, they follow the members of Tenjiku in order to learn about their hideout. Fortunately, they find 2 members a few blocks away, and so they ask them a few questions in a creative way. Meanwhile, in the back, Takemichi drops one of the greatest plot twists of all time, revealing that Kisaki might also have the ability to travel back in time. He suspects this because every time he changed the timeline, it seems like someone ruined it even more. However, each time he returns to the past, the people around him change a little. Yet, Kisaki always stays consistent in his plans. Then, there is the whole hero thing. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by the Twin Devils, who manage to pinpoint the enemy's location. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Maki and his men attack Takashi. For the first few minutes, he manages to fight back. But then, the Haitani brothers Rindu and Ran make an appearance. Ran takes a cheap shot from behind, knocking Takashi's light off. On the other hand, Takemichi and the others manage to enter Tenjiku's hideout. Unbeknownst to them, they were planning on Toman's arrival. Still, for some reason, Koko decides to call off his men and fight alone with Takemichi. He takes the first punch on purpose, as a result, falling to the ground. That is the moment. Takemichi recalls that Koko was his friend in 2nd grade. Yet he says Izana is his hero now. This means that they are enemies. Despite this, they change a little bit of information, as Takemichi reveals that Kisaki was kicked out of Toman because he wanted to take commands, and Koko reveals that there is a traitor in Toman. The same night, Toman calls an emergency meeting at the shrine. Yet, Takemichi is still worried about the fact that he might be playing right into Kisaki's hand. Moments later, as Mikey and Draken take the stage, they initiate the meeting. Instantly, Draken announces that the recently created Tenjiku showed balls to attack the 1st Division captain and vice captain. He calls everyone involved in the attack to step up. In that instance, they reveal that Machi, the ex-leader of a very powerful gang, was leading the assault. At this point, they think that Machi is their leading attacker. Right after, Takashi steps into the spotlight, revealing that even the Haitani brothers have joined up with Tenjiku. This leads everyone to get anxious, as they are worried about all the S62 generation having ganged up. It seems like everyone knows about this generation except us and Takemichi. Following that, Mikey announces that no matter what, they are going to take the fight to Tenjiku. In the end, the developed situation raises Takemichi's red flag. That is when, upon seeing his anxiety, Chifuyu advises him to travel back to the future and confirm his suspicions. Heeding to the advice, Takemichi goes back, explaining everything that occurred in the past, including his hypothesis regarding Kisaki. Despite the newfound information, Naoto reveals that there were no gangs named Tenjiku 12 years ago. Still, he takes it upon himself to investigate. At that moment, Takemichi also goes outside to investigate, but he doesn't even know where to begin. Suddenly, while walking on the road, Takemichi finds the church in which the gang battled against Taiju. To rekindle the memories of the past, Takemichi enters the church in a state of anxiety. In frustration, he prays out loud, disturbing the crowd. At that moment, Taiju appears in front of him, asking Takemichi to pray for his brother Hakai. That is when Takemichi asks to talk to him for a while. Surprisingly, Taiju takes him to a restaurant which he owns. There, along with Naoto, Takemichi asks about the Tenjiku gang from 12 years ago. Just like always, Taiju asks Takemichi if he's suffering from amnesia. But due to the plot, he goes on to tell the story. Unexpectedly, no one won the fight 12 years ago. Instead, Mikey, Kisaki, and Izana decided to band together. As he continues explaining, both Inui and Hajime arrive on the scene with a bunch of Toman guys. In the end, Taiju is forced to fight like old times, allowing both Naoto and Takemichi to escape. Outside, while running, Takemichi finds Kisaki aiming a gun at him. Fortunately, Naoto pushes him aside from the line of action. As a result, he gets shot. Afterwards, Kisaki then shoots Takemichi in the guts. The moment he walks away, Takemichi and Naoto shake hands one last time. Furthermore, Kisaki closely observes this scene. The first thing Takemichi does is visit his victim Naoto in the midst of night. I guess at this point, he doesn't care about people finding out. With an innocent look, Naoto comes to him, not knowing what's going to happen. That is when he tightly grabs his hand, hoping to travel back to the future. But for someone watching from aside, it's a whole another genre. Anyways, Takemichi realizes that Naoto from the future has passed away. This means he can't go back anymore. With that realization comes sorrow and regret, as Takemichi falls to his knees, crying like a 2-year-old. After a while, when Takemichi stops crying, he tells Naoto to go back inside. As the night passes by, despair in his heart grows even more. Eventually, Takemichi notices a shadow on the wrong side, thinking that Naoto is still here. He unintentionally spits out the truth about the future, and him failing to save Hinata from dying over and over again. Suddenly, from the back, Hinata hugs him tightly. She only asks about Takemichi's age and nothing else. Then, she asks if he ever proposed to her in the future. With hesitation, Takemichi says no. However, he recovers from the situation, saying that he always wanted to marry her. This puts Hinata's mind at ease, so much so that she can now die peacefully. They spend the whole night hugging each other, without saying a single word. Later in the morning, Hinata goes back to her house, whereas Takemichi regains his confidence to change the entire future. With everything back to normal, he runs back to his house. Along the way, he runs into Draken, who then takes him to Mickey's house. There, Mikey and Draken reveal that Shinichiro founded the legendary Black Dragon. This doesn't really surprise Takemichi, since he already learned that in the future. Then Emma comes into the room, overhearing their conversation about Izana. That's when she reveals that Izana is her and Mikey's half-brother, although he never really talked to anyone except Shinichiro. With that said, she brings them a box of letters that were originally written by Izana to his older brother. Upon reading them, Emma and the others realize that Izana longed for a family. A few moments later, Mikey suddenly exits the room in need of some fresh air. When everyone leaves, Takemichi tells Draken that Izana is incredibly jealous of Mikey. However, Shinichiro always kept him under balance. But now there is no one to keep him under control. Draken seconds his opinion, revealing that the 9th generation leader of Black Dragon said that he was carrying Izana's will. Later in the afternoon, Takemichi calls Chifuyu, explaining the messed up family tree Mikey had. Apparently, his father was aiming to be a king of some sort, and in a sense, he succeeded, since all 3 sons are basically Vikings. At the end of the conversation, he asks Chifuyu to stand aside, as he intends to kill both Kisaki and Izana before Mikey falls into their hands for the worse. However, before agreeing to this idea, Chifuyu asks Takemichi to present his stance in front of everyone in the First Division. As it turns out, he had already called Akun and the others to his house. They also overheard the whole story, deciding that they will die for their captain when needed. Suddenly outside, Mucho, the 5th Division captain of Toman, arrives with his men. Without saying much, he captures everyone present of the 1st Division and takes Takemichi to an unknown area where he has also tied up both Inui and Hajime. At this point, Takemichi and the others are in a state of confusion, wondering what has gone wrong. That's when Mucho chimes in with an explanation, taking everyone back to the day Mikey and Draken met with Takemichi. He reveals that his position in the gang is kind of special, since he likes the Secret Service agency of Toman. He is the one who tells Mikey about traitors and backstabbers. Initially, Takemichi thinks that Mucho is a traitor, but now he thinks that Mucho believes him to be a traitor. Meanwhile, at Mikey's house, Emma opens up the box of letters Izana wrote to Shinichiro. She recalls the day he was sent to a foster home, causing the 2 of them to separate. Still before going, he promised to come back for Emma very soon. Back at the hideout, Inui voices his opinion, revealing he was once very close to Izana, the 8th generation leader of Black Dragon. He suspects that Mucho might have suspicion over him and Takemichi because of it. However, instantly, Hajime steps in to cover for his best buddy. He says that neither Takemichi nor the 2 of them ratted Toman out. This is the point where Mucho calls everyone a couple of dumb shits, as they don't understand the big picture. With a quick drum roll, Inui reveals that Mucho is one of the S62 generation. As it turns out, they were all in reform school together. In the end, Takemichi realizes that Mucho is the traitor Kaku warned him about. He then asks Mucho about Izana's end goal. This is when Mucho proves himself to be a nighttime pleasure toy, as he doesn't even care what Izana wants. All he knows is that he wants to use Hajime's money-making skills, Kisaki's brain, and Mikey charisma to build the ultimate crime syndicate in the world. Upon hearing this, Takemichi comes to another realization, as he finds a clue to changing the future. With all of strength, he stands up, refusing to let Hajime become Tenjiku's boy toy. He gets a fire in his belly, and so while being tied up, he challenges Mucho to a fight. But as everyone expected, he gets knocked. After regaining consciousness alongside Inui in a trash area, Takemichi recalls that Hajime agreed to join Tenjiku, as long as Mucho promised to let them go. In the end, he carries Inui on his back and walk back home. On their way, Takemichi acknowledges him and Hajime as his friend, promising to bring him back. A while later, they stop by Shinichiro's motorbike shop, where the two of them patch each other. It is then when Inui reveals that he wanted to recreate the first-generation Black Dragon. However, Izana changed their ways, transforming them into a criminal gang rather than a biker gang. Before he knew it, Inui was in reform school. After getting out, he sought Taiju's assistance in recreating Black Dragon. But we all know how that ended. The moment their conversation comes to an end, Takemichi says that he will take over as the 11th generation leader of Black Dragon and save Hajime. Meanwhile, at Mikey's house, Emma goes back into memory lane, recalling the day she first met Mikey and Shinichiro. That morning, her mother left Emma in her grandfather's care. There, her grandfather introduced Shinichiro and Mikey to Emma. Instantly, they thought she was a vegan from the so-called Land of the Free. However, their grandfather told them to act as siblings. From that day onward, Emma used to sneakily watch Mikey and Baji train in the dojo. As expected, Mikey was a genius from the get-go. He had amazing strength and speed even after hardly practicing. Later that day in the afternoon, Baji and Mikey both start making fun of Emma's foreign identity as they start spewing nonsense in English. Suddenly, Emma starts crying out of nowhere. She tells Mikey that her mother has immense hatred towards her. Despite this, she promised to Emma that she will come back. Then one day, Mikey overhears Shinichiro talking to his grandfather, saying that he wants to make Emma smile. Following her brother's wishes, Mikey goes to Emma, telling her to drop the act and call him Mikey instead. As a result, from that day on, Mikey has always had her back and vice versa. On the other hand, at the emergency meeting, Inui recalls the night of winter where he told Mikey that Black Dragon will join with Toman. He also wanted Takemichi to become the 11th generation leader of Black Dragon, since he thinks that Takemichi is the carbon copy of Shinichiro. This makes Mikey jealous, as he was the one who discovered this side of Takemichi. Still, he tells Inui that Takemichi can become the leader of Black Dragon only if he insists. Back in the present, Inui tells Mikey that Tenjiku will initiate their attack on February 22nd because Black Dragon was founded on the same day. Acknowledging the threat, the commanders address their men, revealing that Tenjiku is a criminal syndicate who will use any means necessary. Moments later, Haki enters the meeting, reporting that both Takashi and Nahoya were badly injured by Tenjiku. As of now, they are lying unconscious in the hospital. He says that Toman should also use dirty tricks to fight and kill every member. Despite everyone's agreement, Pei calls out Hakai, reminding him that Pa is in jail due to this very reason. With everyone calm, Mikey says that he is all that Toman needs. The following day, Inui takes Takemichi to Shinichiro's grave. There, he gets appointed as the leader of Black Dragon. At that moment, Izana arrives on the scene. Following him, both Mikey and Emma make an appearance. Immediately, he asks Takemichi to safely escort Emma outside, while they decide the venue of the fight. In the back, Emma tells Takemichi about how Mikey always hides his own weakness. This confuses him, since he believes that Mikey could never become evil with Emma on his side. Afterwards, during their walk back, Kisaki arrives on the scene on a bike. He smashes a metal bat on Emma's head, knocking her unconscious on the spot. Before long, Mikey reaches the scene and carries her to the hospital. On their way, Emma tells Mikey to give her message to Draken, saying that she loves him. Then, on her last breath, she leaves Mikey in Takemichi's care. Despite her dying, Mikey continues to talk with her, revealing that he always dreamt of being an uncle. The same evening on the rooftop, Izana tells Kisaki that his body double got arrested. So, now he can rest easy. For some reason, Kisaki brings up Mikey. He proudly boasts, saying that he knows Mikey better than anyone, and he was just wasting his potential with the guys in Toman. That is the reason he got involved. First, he orchestrated Draken's assassination. However, Takemichi got in the way. Then, he created Valhalla for Mikey to lead. Still, even that plan failed. Adding to this, Izana asks if killing Emma was his final touch, although he can't seem to comprehend the fact that Kisaki got his hands dirty. At this point, Kisaki makes an interesting comment. He asks Izana if that's all he's worried about even after he killed Emma. That is when Izana reveals his true malice, as he wants to kill anyone that is loved by Shinichiro beside him. This makes even Kisaki grunt, since he never met a psychopath like this. Later that night, Draken sees Emma's body soundly in bed. For the first time ever, he breaks up in shock. As this goes on, Takemichi hesitantly goes to talk with Mikey. But in the end, he lacks the words to say anything. Moments later, Draken exits the room and asks Mikey to come outside. There, he starts beating the shit out of him, asking what the hell he was doing at the time of attack. Immediately, Takemichi goes into despair, begging Draken to direct his anger towards him. Yet Draken loses himself completely as he continues to punch the living crap out of Mikey. He reminds Mikey that the reason they founded Toman was to protect everyone. However, most of their friends are either in jail or dead. With that said, Draken stands frozen with tears flowing down from his face. For a moment, Takemichi tells them to accept the outcome, but then he realizes that they are never going to accept it, since he could never accept Hinata's death as well. In the end, he realizes that this was the reason that the future never changed. On the other hand, all of Toman are ready to face Tenjiku in battle. Still, they can't manage to contact Mikey, Draken, or Takemichi. A few moments later, Inui arrives on the scene, revealing that some bad shit went down. Back in the hospital, Takemichi reminds Mikey that he is still the commander. But, upon observing that Mikey has lost all sense of self, he decides to fight by himself. He goes to the meeting, revealing that Emma has died. Instantly, everyone including Inui suggests that they should not fight today. However, Takemichi insists on not running away. Despite the resolve, none of the members are willing to accept his decision, since Takemichi can never fill Baji's shoes. Even though everyone starts to leave, Akun and the others stay, ready to fight. He says that Takemichi is the one who never ran away. Then, suddenly both Nahoya and Takashi arrive on the scene, sitting in wheelchairs. This gives everyone the confidence to fight. On the night of February 22nd, as per the agreement, all of Tenjiku is ready to fight with Toman at the set location. They also brought other biker gang bosses from the area to use them as witnesses. Not only that, they defeated every biker gang in the area, adding their men to their ranks. Suddenly, one of the four main fighters of Tenjiku, Shion, who was also the leader of the 9th generation Black Dragon, speaks up. He boasts about beating Nahoya and Takashi. However, Maki says that Shion used dirty tactics as always. Furthermore, both Draken and Mikey were rendered useless because of Kisaki. This means that Toman's first division is the only one standing. Despite that fact, everyone thinks that they would chicken out after the whole Hajime incident, but Kisaki is the only one amongst them who knows that Takemichi will show up. That is exactly what happens, as all of Tenjiku starts overheating engine sounds coming from afar. Immediately, Takemichi sets his sight on Kisaki, who is standing on the top, waiting for everything to fall into place. Moments later, Shion steps forward to start off with a Vanguard battle. Basically, Vanguard battle is when two fighters meet each other in the ring for a one-on-one fight. Ready to take on Shion, P goes to the front lines. With only one punch, he knocks Shion's light out, portraying that many of Toman's fighters beside the captain have power. It is then when the all-out war begins. One by one, everyone starts their own battle. Yet Chifuyu and the others help Takemichi get to the main line. He knows for a fact that Kisaki is the other person with the ability to time travel. Meanwhile, Izana teaches Shion a good foot-to-ground lesson. He then goes to fight with Pei. In the end, Pei loses to Izana in a flash, with just one kick. This gives everyone the idea that Izana is similar to Mikey. Despite the letdown, Takemichi and the others continue without stopping. Following this format, all the main members of the team pick a fight with Tenjiku's top members. Amidst all the battles, Inui gets into a fight with Hajime. Apparently, he has willingly decided to stay together with Tenjiku. During the fight, Inui reminds Hajime that he doesn't need any more money since his sister Akane is dead. These words take Hajime on a 4K flashback experience. Apparently, Akane was Inui's elder sister. She used to always hang out with him and Hajime. That is when he started falling in love with her. Then one day in the library, Akane falls asleep right beside Hajime. For a second, he closely sets his eyes on Akane's blissful lips, leading him to wet himself. With great courage, he leans in to seal the deal. However, before anything could happen, Akane wakes up, asking what color his Bugatti is. She says that a kiss is only meant for a person you love. It is then when Hajime confesses his feelings for her. Initially, Akane presents a logical argument, revealing that she's 5 years older than him. But after using Rizzler tactics from various shoujo mangas, he finally manages to get the green signal. Being a responsible boyfriend, he walks Akane back to her house. Then excited, he rushes to the park, talking to himself. The people around him think that he lost his nuts and bolts simultaneously. Suddenly, amidst the excitement, Hajime sees a fire starting in the direction of Akane's house. Immediately, he rushes towards the site, only to find Akane's house in flames. Without wasting a single moment, he rushes inside of the house and finally manages to save Akane. However, upon exiting the black smoke, Inui says that it is him and not Akane. Unfortunately, by that time, the officials arrive and stop him from going inside the house. A few hours later, in the hospital, Inui tells Hajime that the officials managed to save Akane. Yet with her third-degree burns, she needs immediate medical attention. Despite the urgency, his parents don't have the 40 million yen required to save her life. It was from that day onward, Hajime promised to make 40 million yen, even if it killed him. He used to visit the usual library to research money-making methods. But in the end, all of his efforts were in vain. When all hope seemed lost, Hajime turned to crime. He used to gather kids, giving them plans to steal money from others. Little by little, he started to make a name for himself as the infamous money genius. Until, one day, he receives a call from the hospital revealing that Akane has passed away. He cries for hours, wishing he had more money. Back in the present as the fight continues, Hajime tells Inui that he can't stop in his tracks. Most of his life, everyone has used him to get money. This was the reason he came in contact with all the gang bosses like Izana, Taiju. He thinks that even Inui wanted to use him for his gain in order to rebuild Black Dragon. In the end, he still wishes that he had more money back then. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Mucho intervenes in the battle, saying that Inui will fight him. On the other hand, Takemichi is fighting with the fierce Kaku, and this time, he won't take a punch on purpose. Up top, Kisaki says that Toman isn't over yet. As per Izana predicted, being a good sport, he takes the objection, directing it back to the vicious generation. He tells Kisaki that they won't lose until the S62 generation remains. Back in the battlefield, the Haitani brothers fight together against Hakai and Angry. Using their synergy, they slay those rams like never before. Eventually, Hakai and Angry find common ground, as both of them live in the shadow of their elder brother. In the city, Takashi and Smiley drag themselves around town. As a big brother, Smiley is unconditionally worried about being angry since he has always been a crybaby. Still, to keep up his morale, Takashi assures him that both Hakai and Angry are really strong. Back on the battlefield, both of the little siblings fail to collaborate with each other. This causes Rindo to gain the advantage and break the joint of Angry's leg. Then, he locks Hakai in a deadly position and together with Ran, they brutally injure him. In that moment, every battle stops, as everyone witnesses the cruelty of the vicious generation. Out of nowhere, Angry starts crying like a baby who's pooped in his pants. He tells the Haitani brother that the last time he cried was back in 4th grade. When he came back to his senses, a group of middle schoolers was on the ground. That was when Smiley forced him to make a promise of never crying. However, now they have gone and done it. Rindu, who's full of himself, initiates the attack. Yet, despite his full strength, he cannot manage to make him budge an inch. Little did anyone realize that Angry can defeat one of the top members with just one blow. He then sneaks up on Ran and with the same principle defeats him. To prove he's a macho man, Mucho comes to challenge him. He throws using judo. But Angry manages a mid-air reversal, knocking his socks off. With his ego hurt, Mucho gets up and takes out a knife. Fortunately, before he can strike, Kaku intervenes and forces him to faint. Despite the help, he announces that he is not on Toman's side. To back up his words, he beats the crap out of Takemichi. Yet, he keeps standing over and over again, until Chifuyu intervenes in the battle asking him to stop. That's when Takemichi says that Kaku lacks the determination to win, even if it means dying. To test these words, Kisaki descends from the throne with a pistol in his hand. Immediately, everyone present on the scene, including members of both biker gangs, are left shocked since this battle was just supposed to be a kid's fight. Despite the gruesome situation, Takemichi's eyes hint no fear. He recalls all the hopes and dreams that people put in him from the future and the past. At this point, Kisaki is confused and wavering in his resolve. It is then when Takemichi takes a gamble, asking what he is so afraid about. To come off as confident, Kisaki takes the shot, injuring Takemichi's left foot. However, the determination in his eyes still remains. As a natural instinct, Takemichi says that he's not charismatic as Mikey, smart as Naoto, genius like Hajime, big like Mucho, nor is he strong like Draken. And so, in the end, all he can do is never give up. He stands up to Kisaki, telling him to shoot in the head. Frustrated, he knocks him down with a punch. Upon seeing their captain's courage and will, the rest of the division starts standing upright. Amongst them, Chifuyu comes forward. Firstly, he says that Takemichi was the best leader for the first division. Then, he turns his attention to Kisaki, reminding him that they are here to fistfight and not to kill. Moments later, Kisaki laughs like hell, since delivering long speeches doesn't win fights. So, as an alternative, he proposes that Tomen and Tenjiku should merge together with Mikey on top. This pisses off Takemichi to an extreme extent, leading him to punch Kisaki and right on the money. He tells Kisaki that things won't turn out the same in the future again. This confuses Kisaki, as he asks if Takemichi lost his balls. At that moment, Izana jumps into the fight. Without any shred of mercy, he kicks Takemichi like a football. Despite the beatdown, Takemichi gets up over and over again. This reminds Izana of Shinichiro's resilience. In that instance, Takemichi moves in for the attack, but then he glances over and sees Mikey. The sudden stop in action leads to people believing that Takemichi has lost his shit. Instead, he puts his fist into the air, saying that he didn't lose. That is when the unexpected happens as Mikey enters the fight, shocking everyone on the scene. He disregards everything and goes on to hug Takemichi. Moments later, Draken arrives on the scene with Hinata. As it turns out, Hinata revealed the whole plot to Mikey and Draken, ruining all the future manga sales. With that said, Draken tells Mikey that Tenjiku has 200 men. And so, like the top G, he asks if they need a handicap. This causes a ruckus on the scene, causing everyone to taunt Mikey. At that moment, Mikey shouts at the top of his lungs, telling Izana to bring him 20,000 men instead of 200. Despite the forces, Izana and Mikey fight one-on-one, so that they can settle this sibling rivalry once and for all. Initially, for the first time ever, Mikey goes on the defensive. He gets kicked around like a damn punching bag. Despite this, Mikey desperately wants to know the reason Izana killed Emma. But before answering the question, Izana shows everyone a flashback of his past, just to provide context. As it turns out, in foster home, Shinichiro was the first person to visit him. Little by little, the two brothers started getting close. He learned everything from fighting to fashion. Then one day, after getting out from juvenile prison, Izana asks Shinichiro to let him command Black Dragon. Surprisingly, Shinichiro also wanted to pass on his dream to his siblings. First Izana, then Mikey. These words force Izana to feel overly jealous, since he always wanted to have Shinichiro to himself. Back in the present, he tells Mikey to become an empty shell so that he can create his own new Shinichiro. On the sidelines, Draken tells Takemichi that Izana is getting weaker and weaker after taking Mikey's kicks. In the end, Mikey realizes that Izana's strength comes from solitude. However, he says that they both have each other, and so they can be together for the rest of their lives. Despite the sentiment, Izana stubbornly insists on fighting. This pisses off Mikey, who decides that Izana won't hit him any longer. With just a few hits, he defeats Izana, proving that he's the invincible Mikey. Frustrated with his loss, Izana rushes towards Kisaki and snatches his gun. He then prepares to shoot Miki with it. Luckily, just before he pulls the trigger, Kaku comes along and intervenes. He forces Izana to come to a realization that Tenjiku lost. He recalls the day Izana and he first met. That day, he was going to commit suicide. However, Izana gave him a purpose to live for by making him his servant. Back in the present, Kisaki picks up the gun and shoots him from behind in hopes of eliminating the nuisance. That is the moment Kaku realizes that allowing Kisaki to meet with Izana was a big mistake. Right after, he rushes for the attack. However, Kisaki fires the pistol in cold blood. Unexpectedly, Izana jumps into the line of action and gets shot instead. This shocks everyone on the scene, including Mikey. Lying on the ground bleeding to death, Izana says that his servant is a handful. Moments later, he asks Mikey to come closer to him. There, he reveals that one day he ran into his own mother. At the casino, she was gambling like a complete addict. That is when she revealed the truth, saying that Izana is her stepchild. Without wasting a single moment, he confronts Shinichiro about the whole truth. As it turns out, he already knew about it. Still, for him it doesn't make any difference. Back in the present, as Izana's soul starts to leave his body, he asks Mikey if he would still consider him a big brother, if he would still save him no matter the things he's done. But in the end, he admits that he took things too far. After that, he draws his final breath. At night, it starts pouring snow. This reminds Kaku of the night Izana dreamt of building a squad, where all those who didn't have any family would come together. Then, he holds his hands and passes away. Ultimately, Mikey announces the results of the battle, telling everyone to escape. However, the vicious generation says that they will stay behind. They always admired the way Mikey and Azana lived, and in the end they saw their captain's soul. Afterwards, Mikey directs his attention towards Kisaki, but he manages to escape with the help of Hanma. Eventually, both Draken and Takemichi follow suit. With a short bike chase, they manage to catch up to him. Then, the rat chase begins. At that time, Draken carries Takemichi on his back, as his way of paying back in their first fight with Valhalla. During the chase, Hanma sneaks up on him, attacking Draken from behind. This forces Takemichi to chase Kisaki all by himself. A while later, the two sworn enemies come face to face in a fistfight. While hitting each other constantly, Takemichi notices that they are in the same place where Takemichi vowed to become the leader of Toman. That is the moment, Takemichi tells Kisaki, about time traveling back and forth to the future and the past. Then it dawned on Kisaki that Takemichi already knew about his plans. Still, there is one thing that still bugs Takemichi. Why did Kisaki ever kill Hinata in the future? Even at this point, Takemichi is still under the assumption that Kisaki can travel through time. Then all of a sudden, Takemichi gets a vision of the future, where Kisaki proposes to Hinata. As it turns out, his perfect plan was to take over Japan and then marry the girl he loved. But all of his plans in the end were rendered useless by Takemichi. It is then when Takemichi kicks the gun out of his hand and takes it for himself. The moment he is about to shoot, Hinata and Mikey arrive on the scene to stop him. Kisaki takes this chance to escape from the scene. However, worried that he can trigger a time leap, Takemichi follows suit. In the end, Kisaki reveals that he can't travel to the future. But the moment he tries to reveal an important detail, Truck-kun arrives and isekais him. Ultimately, the battle between Tenjiku and Toman ended up with 5 arrests and 3 deaths. After a few days, Takemichi visits Kaku in the hospital. There, he confesses that despite Kisaki dying, he can't help but tremble from fear.